Welcome to MaxxEcu Training Part 30. This video we're going to be exploring using our advanced fail-safe protection strategies within our MTune software. When we're calibrating our vehicle, we always want to have fail-safes in place so we don't damage the engine. The last video we looked at the basic implementation of some fail-safe strategies. This video we're going to be looking at what we can do when we add some additional sensors onto our MaxxEcu, something like oil pressure, fuel pressure, or oil temperature, and how we can integrate those into a fail-safe protection so we don't damage our engine. Again, this is above and beyond what we covered in our last video, but it is building on what we've learned in our last video. We're gonna have a lot to cover. Let's jump into our video so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're gonna be taking a look at our advanced fail-safe protection strategies that we have in our MaxxEcu. The last video we looked at our basic fail-safe strategies. These are things like our limiters, our rev limiters, our boost cut, lean cut, and EGT cut. Let's actually jump in and take a look at that real quick. Going up here under start, we're going to go under limits and we can find rev limit, boost cut, lean, EGT cut, and warnings. We covered this information in our last video. We're now going to be taking a look at and focusing on setting up our general purpose limiter tables or user cut tables. Now the general purpose and user cut will have the same output or the same kind of desired result where if we go and have a condition that's unsafe, we want to shut down the fuel or spark, we're going to be able to accomplish that in either situation here. We usually work with a general purpose limiter. However, the user cut table allows us to have a little bit more specific way we can take a look and implement the actual cut procedure in terms of either a fuel cut percent or an ignition cut percent. Let's actually dig into that a little bit right now. What we're going to do is jump into our rev limit, and then I want to demonstrate something very quickly. Now, when we're talking about our rev limiter, we know that we've programmed here a rev limit type. This is going to be whether we have a fuel or ignition cut or the combination of both. In this case, I set ignition cut and then fuel cut 100 RPMs later. So we can actually see here, if we're looking at this, our rev limit control range is showing 200 RPM. And what this means is if I have my limiter programmed at 9,000, it will be the start of the cut. And because I've set ignition cut as my primary means for reducing the power output on the limiter type, it will go in and start to initiate a percentage of ignition cut. 0% ignition cut means we have full spark. 100% means we have no spark, completely cuts it off. 50% means there's some residual spark there. It will start to get progressive in the way it cuts based on how far of a control range we're specifying. So 9,000 is where it's going to start. In this case, if I say 200, 9,200 is where it will go to 100% cut. It'll start off at 0 at 9,000, cut fully at 92. Now let me just go here and demonstrate this very quickly so we can just see this. So I can show you in illustration purposes. Go here to 9,000, we'll change this to 2,000. Now we can see down here my engine speed's around 1,800 or so. If we go into ignition and we take a look down here, we see ignition cut reason. Ignition cut's at 0 and the reason is none. It doesn't have ignition cut being applied right now. Let me bring my engine speed up here just a little bit, just onto the onset of where it could start to cut at. So right when I go above 2,000 RPM, it can literally be 5 RPM higher. So I'm gonna go really slow with my engine speed right now until I get to roughly 2,000. Let's go up a little bit higher. Notice I'm at 3 RPM over. So I've specified 2,000 as my limiter of where I don't wanna go higher than, or where I start my cut at, I should say. And then in this case, we see the ignition cut percent is 10, 11% at 3 RPM over. And we do see the cut reason is rev limit. It tells me what the reason it's being cut for and how much cut percentage it's going to be operating at. Now, if I go higher and higher with my engine speed, let me go here a little bit higher. We go all the way up to 2,190 RPM. We see we're at 95% limiter. So if I went up to fully to 2,200, again, my range here is 200 RPM. If I went to 2,200, this would be 100% cut, just so we're very clear of how this is going to work. Now, when we're working with and programming our general purpose limiters, we can specify what we want these advanced fail-safe strategies to cut at as far as fuel or spark, but it will follow this cut span of 200 RPM. Whatever we program here in our RPM limiter settings, that's what we'll tag through for the RPM limiter settings here, these general purpose limiter settings. So I wanted to be very clear with this. The user cut will allow us to have a little bit more control over how this cut is being applied. And here we're just linearly applying that cut based on the range of the span here. And user cut, that will allow us to have an unlinear amount of cut based on the conditions we're trying to work within the fail-safe strategy. Make a little bit more sense towards the end of the video, but that's going to be the difference here in what we're working with. So general purpose limiter, it will follow the cut strategy for the main rev limiter. User cut will allow us to be a little bit more specific with how we're implementing the cut. Now at this point, I do want to mention something very quickly here. Boost cut, lean cut, EGT, and warnings, specifically boost cut, lean cut, and EGT. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.